Hello. Today we're going to be talking about time, specifically converting units of time. For most of you, this is probably going to be review, but for some, it's going to be really valuable information to have, so make sure to write it down. So when we talk about time, we can talk about macro time and micro time. Those aren't official terms, I'm just coming up with them. Basically, there's time that we measure in a calendar and there's time we measure on a watch. So let's start with the time we measure in a calendar. These are what I call conversion factors. So because they help us to relate units of time to one another. So for example, in 1 year, there are 12 months. You're probably pretty aware of this already. If I counted up all the months on the calendar, there would be 12 of them. There are also 52 weeks and 365 days in every year. In every month, there are about 30 days. We know from experience that that's not true of every month. Some months there's only 28 days, some days there's 31 days, but we'll say there's about 30 days in a month. And in every month there's about 4 weeks. Once again, it's not exactly equal, but there are usually at least 4 whole weeks in every month. And in 1 week there are 7 days. That's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Every single week is 7 days. And in 1 day there are 24 hours, and this is when we get closer to a clock. On the clock we have 12 hours represented, and then we count them AM and PM, so that makes 24 total hours. And each hour is 60 minutes, and each minute is 60 seconds. I don't know the history of who came up with that, but that's how it works. So there's 60 seconds make up 1 minute, 60 minutes 1 hour, and 24 hours 1 day. So that's time in a simply put. Make sure that you're copying all this down, and I'll give you a second. If this is new information to you, I want you to go ahead and copy it down now. And please pause the video to copy. Okay, now sometimes we measure in larger units than a year. For example, 10 years put together is a decade. Think of deca like decagon. If you remember in geometry, that's a shape with 10 sides. So 10 years is a decade. 100 years is a century, and I like to think of this word cent as in there are 100 cents in a dollar. So 100 cent century, that's 100 years. That's one useful way to remember. And then there's 1,000 years in a millennium. So when we went from the 1900s to the 2000s, we were changing over an entire millennium. Oop, I missed a 0 there. So 1,000 years is a millennium, 100 years a century, 10 years is a decade. If that's new information, go ahead and pause to review that now. All right, so now let's try some exercises on IXL. How many days are there in a week? There are 7 days. How many years are in 3 decades? So if each decade is 10 years, then that means 3 of them is going to be 3 years times 10 decades. 10 years per decade. So there's going to be 30 years total. So I'm going to say 30 years. How many hours are in 6 days? Awesome. So here we're going to do, there's 6 days. There are 24 hours in 1 day. So I'm going to multiply that by 24 hours. So when you're going from a bigger unit to a smaller unit of time, you're going to multiply. Because it's going to take more of these smaller units to make up the big unit. So your final answer should be bigger. So I'm gonna grab out my calculator really quick. Handy dandy calculator. 6 times 24, 144. Let's see if that's the answer. Fantastic. How many minutes are 5 in 5 hours? Perfect. So now okay, how many minutes are in 5 hours? So this one is the same kind of problem as this one, where we're going from hours to minutes. Hours is a bigger unit than minutes, so we're just going to do hours, and then we're going to multiply that by how many minutes are in an hour. So there's 60 minutes in 1 hour, so 5 hours times 60 minutes. Back to my handy dandy calculator. 5 times 60, and I got 300. 300, and let's put that in. All right, let's try this one. How many seconds are in an hour? So now this one, there's actually 2 steps. So we're starting with 1 hour, and now we're actually going to be moving from hour. We can't go directly from hour to seconds because we don't actually have that information. We know how many minutes are in an hour and we know how many seconds are in a minute, but we don't know off the top of our heads how many seconds are in an hour. So we're going to do 1 hour, and let's translate it into minutes and then translate it into seconds. So times 60 minutes, and then each one of those minutes has 60 seconds in it, so we'll multiply by another 60 for seconds, and so now you're going to get 1 times 60 times 60, and if you're me, you get 3,600. Let's see if that's the answer. Woohoo!